And now, the Rink Rap podcast from Forever Blueshirts, talking all things New York Rangers hockey. Here's your host, Jim Cerny.
Welcome back to Rink Rap at Forever Blueshirts. I'm Jim Cerny. Really pleased to welcome aboard former NHL center and former New York Ranger, two-time former New York Ranger, and also current Utah Mammoth television broadcaster, television star, Dominic Moore. How's that for a build-up, Dom?
That sounds way overdone. But yes, two-time former Ranger sounds accurate. And yeah, miss my days in New York, that's for sure.
Well, it's interesting. I'll start on the TV end. I call you TV star. I'm not joking. Like the accolades that you and the entire crew got the first season in Utah, like that's legit. And listen, you got a great partner there, by the way. Matty McConnell is one of my favorites. Great dude, obviously great at what he does. But tell me a little bit about that and that opportunity and kind of what drew you to that opportunity.
Yeah, so I started after I retired. I took a year off. We had my first daughter right before COVID. And then coming, in that bubble season there, I got invited by NBC to be a part of their coverage there, which was a lot of fun. That was my first kind of dipping my toes in the water with the broadcast side. I got to work with some great people, including my first ever game. Calling a game was with Kenny Albert, so that was a big thrill. I don't know how many people get lucky enough to their first ever, and it's not like I'd even rehearsed or done any other games at other levels. It was an incredible amount of trust from NBC that they were willing to just throw me on an NHL game with a but I guess they had me in good hands with a legend, with Kenny, who's as good as it gets. But it was an honor having spent so much time with Kenny, as a player, him being in the locker room with us and getting to know him and liking him so much that we were able to share that experience. So that was great. Unfortunately, NBC lost the rights after that. Was able to, eventually was invited to be a part of ESPN's broadcast team, and did that for a couple of years, which was a good experience and great people there. And then, I stepped away from that briefly just to spend a little bit more time with the family. The travel had added up quite a bit. And then when the Mammoth got the team, they were putting together their broadcast team and reached out. And it just seemed like a really incredible organization, having been around and played for so many teams, as you know, Jim. You know that it doesn't grow on trees, that you have a special ownership group and special leadership, that are in charge of the team, and it all starts at the top is such an important part of it. And then to be able to be a part of something from the ground up and help grow the sport in a new market, teach the game, share the love for the game to a whole new audience, was really exciting. And so we've had a blast so far here in Utah.
Yeah, you mentioned Ryan Smith, who, well, you didn't mention him by name, but the ownership. I mean, you talk about rave. We talk about your rave reviews from the broadcasting side. I mean, we have heard nothing but the
Yeah.
ultimate, the best things about Ryan Smith and the way he's run the team and the way he's involved in the community and everything from
Yeah.
top to bottom with that organization.
Yeah. I mean, I thought from afar that I was getting into a great situation in terms of the organization, but it's even exceeded that in terms of everything that Ryan and Ashley Smith say they're going to do, they do, and then they go beyond that. And they really are mission driven in terms of the state and the sport, trying to make the sport accessible to everyone and build community here in the state of Utah around sports and entertainment. That's not just lip service; they really are committed to it and back it up with their actions, and again go beyond that. So that's been awesome. So to be a part of that is wonderful.
So the Rangers come to town, obviously, this weekend. And, we'll get into that in a bit. This is a little bit more on the sad side, for sure. But hey, the Rangers come in. Obviously, you have, a lot of people in the game. Larry
Yeah.
Brooks was one of them. And obviously,
Yes.
he will not be making this trip. He won't be part of
Yeah.
this and passing away last week. Just kind of your thoughts. I saw you, do a public mention on social media last
Yeah.
week. But if you can touch on, kind of the player reporter relationship that you had built in your time with the Rangers with Larry.
I always enjoyed my time with Larry, and you think about it, you spending a lot of time. You know, obviously, I was with New York when I started my career, and Larry was there. He was at my first ever training camp when I, you know, accidentally hit Mark Messier and knocked him on his back. Larry Brooks was there to see that and ask me about it in the locker room, and he's there for after my first game, and he's there, after Game 6 of the Eastern Conference Finals when we make it to
Yeah,
the Stanley Cup. So he's there and a part of all these memorable moments and experiences. I always found him to be very respectful and thoughtful, and no one was more passionate, dedicated, and really served the fans better than Larry. So, it was definitely a real sad day when we heard about his passing, and just knowing how important he was to so many people and how many relationships he had built over the years, and how such a consistent figure he was around the team, an important part of what it meant to follow the Rangers, and so wish nothing but the best for his family, but he'll be sorely missed.
for sure. Well said. And I know the family appreciates, even just the mention on social media that you did last week. And you weren't the only player. And I had fans come to me and say, boy, there seemed to be a lot of players. I thought, Larry had adversarial relationships with all these guys. I'm like, listen, Larry's a tough guy for sure. But boy, did he have
Yeah.
the respect of the players, like players, coaches, management. And you saw Torts, come out, reach out to him in his final days. That really, to me, speaks to the respect that he held within the hockey community, within the locker room.
No doubt. Yeah, I mean, Larry could be opinionated, but I think that's what made him uh, uh, authentic, right? I think that the fans knew that they would always get what he thought. The fans knew that they could always count on an opinion, and Larry wasn't afraid. He wouldn't shy away from it. And to be able to do that and still maintain the respect within the locker room. And again, there's always going to be players that took exception to it. I remember famously Dan Boyle took
Yeah.
exception to that, but
Yeah.
um, listen, that speaks to the passion, right? Like, again, no one was more passionate about, serving the fans, and trying to give them insight and something to sink their teeth in about their team, as Larry was, and fans could count on that for so many years.
Yeah. You mentioned, or we mentioned, your couple tours of duty on Broadway. What was I always like asking, former players when they look back on their career, what was kind of your welcome to New York moment, opposed to, I shouldn't say opposed to, but other than knocking the captain on his rear end, of course, in practice, which might have been a questionable career move on your part, but it did work out for you. But seriously, like, do you remember the moment, a pinch me moment, NHL, Madison Square Garden, good or bad, whatever the moment might have been, where he said, "Yep,
Yeah.
here's my garden moment. Here's my first Rangers moment."
Yeah, I mean, on the ice, obviously, my first game was in Montreal.
Oh,
It was a memorable game for lots of reasons. Obviously, the history that's in that building in Montreal, and to be able to put on the Rangers jersey, two historic teams going at it, teams that you grew up admiring, knowing all the history of both of those teams and the great players that have come across the decades wearing those jerseys. jerseys, and to put on that kind of a jersey is, I mean, it doesn't even seem real. Off the ice, obviously, first goal at Madison Square Garden would be in that category as well. Off the ice, uh, I remember, first year, just sitting in the training room after practice, and I thought I was dressed as well as I could be. But Eric Lindros came into the training room and said, "Listen, what are you doing this afternoon?" And I said, "I don't know, nothing." I was still living in the hotel at that
Yeah.
point. And he said, you're coming with me into the city. We're gonna go shopping. You need to get some decent clothes." And I think I had like an Old Navy fleece on that I had worn all through college. You know, that was my wardrobe. I didn't know anything different, right? I think I had one pair of pants that, you know, they got worn pretty much every day. So he took me downtown. We went to some, kind of designer backdoor, places where there was some boutique designers, and bought an overpriced t-shirt and a pair of jeans, and I was looking much more fashionable the next day. But just
Well, it
just for a veteran and Hall of Famer to take the time to
yeah.
do that was pretty awesome.
And then you were able to catch up to your buddy Henrik Lundqvist eventually. You were right there, 1A,
Yeah,
1B when it
speaking of
came to
fashion, right?
right,
Yeah.
right, the well-dressed guys. Yeah. You guys obviously came up together,
Yeah.
the draft year, and then, your second tour of duty, he was at the height of his powers and everything. Uh, did you know? Did you have a clue? I mean, you were just a kid out of college and everything. Did you sense that he was going to be the Henrik
Yeah.
Lundqvist that he ended up to be? Like, was there any inclination? Were you smart enough to know that?
I don't think anyone could claim that they were. One thing that you could tell is that he was his own person. Even as a rookie, he was wearing the pointy shoes as a rookie. It wasn't like he became a star and then all of a sudden started dressing like a star. He was always the same. And I love that about Henrik, was just that he's always just been himself, um, and true to himself, and just let that emerge. Obviously, it's funny, Weeksy, Kevin Weeks and Henrik and I are, we've got a good text thread going, and always keeping in touch. And
Yeah,
it was Weeksy that got injured, and
yeah.
Hank comes in, and the rest is history. Um, but he certainly took MSG by storm, and I remember those very early days where they started chanting his name and pronouncing it wrong, but that was fine because they were embracing their new Swedish hero.
So I've always wondered this, and I just always would forget to ask the question. So game 5, LA, 2014 Stanley Cup Final, double OT. You guys lose. Alec Martinez scores game-winning, Stanley
Thanks,
Cup winning
Jim. I
goal.
really appreciate you
Well,
bringing
I'm
that up.
really, really
Yeah.
building this up for you here. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
She
the
wanted to
locker.
make my day.
Yeah, I figured I'd make you really happy today.
Yeah.
You notice how I got to that first before we even got to Dom Moore's, Eastern Conference winning goal in Game 6 against Montreal. I just skipped right past that, went straight to the Cup final, losing it that year. But there's a point to this, because we were talking about Henrik. And I remember going in that room 45, 50 minutes, whatever, however later it was, until the doors opened to your guys' dressing room, and going in there and thinking in my head, my God, what am I going to say to these guys, after this whole great season and everything? And the first person I see is Henrik, and he's still in full uniform. He still has the mask, not on his face, but perched on his head still. And he's, still dripping sweat, and he's sitting there, his head's down. I'm like, oh, this isn't going to be easy. So anyway, get through it. Remember doing that. I still remember everybody I talked to post game that night. But the one question that I always have forgotten to ask guys over the years is that flight home. Like, I saw Henrik there, and I saw all you guys. Everybody's devastated. But boy, Henrik was wearing it,
Hmm.
no question. So the question is, what's that like? What's that flight like home? And did Dom Moore or anybody else sit next to Henrik on the way home? Because I know you guys, used to, sit together on the plane and everything. Was there a conversation? Was there what was it like? Walk me through it.
We did sit next together, but I don't remember any details from that flight, to be honest. I think I think it was particularly tough for him, right? Knowing that it was always going to be the knock on him that, okay, he's, the greatest goalie not to have won a Stanley Cup.
Right.
And I think the competitor that he was, that felt like for him, okay, this was my chance, and we didn't pull it off. Were we going to get another chance or not? You don't know.
Yep.
Uh, so I think that was truly devastating for him. For me, I think obviously, as Ranger fans know from that year, for me personally, I've been through a lot, and I
Yeah.
think in some respects the loss wasn't as hard for me,
Right.
just because I had a different perspective on things.
Sure.
I was just truly grateful for the opportunity to play in these incredible moments and have these incredible moments, share them with my teammates, and leave it all out there. And honestly, at the end of the day, whether you win or lose doesn't really matter. So I think in that respect, uh, we were probably a little bit different.
Right. Of course. Uh, so I glossed over the goal against Montreal, and I know you're up against the clock here, but
Yeah.
hey, we have to get like years later. Like I was talking to Derek Stepp on this one. Like he'll go on chapter and verse. He will give you an hour, 2 hour. He'll go on and on and on about the overtime goal, the series winning goal against the Capitals that he scored, as well he should.
Steps a chatter. Yeah, you
You noticed.
we carpooled enough for me to know that. Yeah.
But now I'm going to digress because you said that real quick. Might he be the funniest guy from that team in that room? Driest sense of humor, or is Girardi more dry than Stepp?
Girardi's more dry than Step, but Step is the most self-deprecating of the group.
Good
You
point.
know, he famously, in one of his exit meetings, Alain Vigneault told him that quite dissatisfiedly that Step, you have the body of a bowler, and Step famously just came out of the meeting and told all the boys, that's the kind of guy that Step was. He's So, and it wasn't
Yeah,
untrue. He did kind of have that kind of a build. Yeah.
he was a beaut. Is a beaut to
Yeah.
this day.
Yeah.
But yeah, looking back on it, that moment, I talked about, what was your welcome to New York moment? Boy, there's so many things to remember about Don Moore's time with the Rangers on the ice, off the ice, all of it. But everyone's going to remember that goal, that game winner against Montreal in Game 6. Another brilliant Henrik performance, I might add.
Yeah.
So talk to me about that. Like I hear so many times guys say, "Yeah, you score a big goal like that, you'd black out." There was still a lot of hockey to be played at that point. This late second period when you scored. So
Yeah.
kind of walk me through it. Was it a blackout moment or was it relief? What was the vibe like when you scored that?
Yeah. No, definitely not a blackout moment. I think the tension in the arena was, I mean, through the roof, right? Everyone's on their feet, scoreless game, a game away from the finals, first time in 20 years. The tension in the building was just palpable. And so to get that goal when it went in, that tension was just unleashed. And, as the goal scorer, it went right through me.
Yeah.
And I remember turning around and having this view of the whole side of the arena, just going bananas. And I felt like just just felt like one with the whole building. So yeah, truly, truly unique, special experience. And I think, as you said, there was a lot of hockey left in the game. The other, I think, most memorable part of that game was just, again, knowing it was my job to try to close things out, win faceoffs at the end of the game,
Yeah.
and protect the house.
Yeah.
uh, what an honor to be able to do that, and then have the seconds tick down, and then rush back to Henrik for to celebrate. I mean, that was uh, that was a special night.
So again, I know you have to run. I appreciate all the time that you gave us
Yeah.
today. So we'll have you on again. Well, I want to go over because I wanted to pat you on the back, even though it sounds like a backhanded compliment. You know who was in the penalty box when Brian Boyle scored in Game 5 against the Kings, right? That
Oh
shorthanded
yeah,
goal.
yeah,
You know who that guy was. You got
yeah.
to take
There's
credit for that. You set Boiler up for a final goal of the season for the Rangers. You set it up. You
you
put the
you saw
wheels in
my
motion.
my celebration in the box, right?
It was well done on your part. All right, quick final one for you. We will get to that. There's so much to go over with you, but we'll get to that another day. Just real quick, set us up. Rangers Mammoth Saturday night hockey in Utah.
Yeah,
Walk me through it. It's a big challenge for both teams. Mammoth, are they a playoff team this season? And is this kind of a test for both teams? These are two really good teams.
yeah. Points right now are at a premium for every team in the league. I don't know if you saw, Jim, but there was something from the NHL PR department yesterday that
Yes.
81% of the games this season have been within a goal, and that's well beyond the previous record. So it's a historically uh, the most parity the league has ever had on any given night. Any team can win, and I think the Rangers and the Mammoth are both in that boat where they're winning a lot of close games and losing a lot of close games and feeling like they're leaving
Yeah.
points on the table. Um, and so I think it'll be one of these games where the details matter. All the little things that both teams are going to do in the game are gonna add up to the small margin of victory. Um, the Mammoth are in their busiest stretch of the season right now, where they've got basically 4 games a week until Christmas. So they're in a gauntlet in terms of the volume of games that they're dealing with. So should be a fun one though. It'll be a great night.
Absolutely. And again, we'll try and have you on later in the season. We'll talk more about the Mammoth because that's a fun team to watch. That is a really great mixture
Yeah,
of kind of young veterans and then a lot of great young talent. Got a few cup
yeah.
winners sprinkled in. I love watching the games, and I love watching your work with Matty as well. And
Thank you.
thank you. Yeah, thank you for joining us today. Give us a kind of a look back and a look ahead.
I
And
look forward to being back at MSG in January too.
yeah,
We'll be looking forward to
absolutely.
that.
All
Yeah.
right. Sounds good. Dom Moore, thanks for a few minutes today.
Of course.